Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about some incredibly unique cards in Commander that, well, I am considering building decks around, and you should be too, because these things are so unique, so amazing. Let's jump into them. First up, starting off with a bad gifts card, at least I'm calling it. Silver Quill Lecturer. You could build an entire weird deck around this thing. Doesn't have to be bad, gifts necessarily, but let's talk about a 3/3 core wizard for 5 mana in white. Creature spells you cast have demonstrate, which is a very weird mechanic, essentially. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may copy it. If you do, choose an opponent to also copy it. Each copy becomes a token. Basically, demonstrating here, I get to do this, you get to do this. Cool, we both get to do this. Extra value for you. So essentially, you are doubling up on your creatures, which you can play into with things like, well, populate, ETBs, LTBs, all the amazing things. I mean, yeah, you could go like Song of the World Soul, which is actually another card to build a deck around, and I love that card. Wizards reprint it, it's like $8 now. You could go in that populate direction, but you also could go in the direction of, hey, opponents, cool, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna give you like, is it called Steel Golem? Whatever those cards are that are like, hey, I can't cast creature spells anymore. I can't cast artifact spells anymore. I can't do this. I can't do that. All of those giant negative effect creatures and being like, okay, you get it, because you have to copy it. So have fun being able to go in that direction. Absolutely lovely. So yeah, there are different directions to go with this one. This one can be a very weird one though, so definitely keep that in mind. And keep in mind, if you're giving out the bad gifts, have ways to sacrifice them for yourself. You don't want, like, oh, I can't cast creature spells anymore. I guess the deck doesn't work. But yeah, a really cool card for a bad gifts or populate strategy. Moving on, Scholar of the Losttrop. One of the most unique cards I have ever seen. And yeah, I built a very unique deck around this one with Grimgrin. A very cool deck. I absolutely love that one where it's like, hey, cast your entire graveyard. 5/5 Sphinx with flying for 7 mana in blue. Enters the battlefield and may cast target instant sorcery or artifact card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If an instant or spell cast this way and put it in your graveyard, it's going to get exiled. You know that whole thing. Basically, you get to cast things for free on ETB. Most things like this would have like a enters the battlefield. If you cast it, you get this effect. Kind of like Artisan of Kozilek, reanimating things. This doesn't have that. And that makes this incredibly, well, weird and amazing because, again, you can use and abuse certain things, like maybe like a blink effect or, yes, a clone spell as well. If I keep actually, being like, okay, ETB, I'll see that, cackling counterpart in my graveyard clone spell. Awesome, I'll copy my Scholar of the Losttrop. Oh, I got another one. Cool, all right, I get another ETB. Do it again and again and again. I mean, not with the same spell because you need different clone effects that are going to get exiled. That being said, if you maybe have like a Panharmonicon type situation and maybe you've got that double up of the ETB, you could get something like, oh, I don't know. I mean, Pull from Eternity, some copy spells as well. Ways to actually, get things back. You can do some pretty weird things, actually. And by Pull from Eternity, I mean more like Rift Sweeper. But yeah, you can do some really weird things with this kind of a card. Again, there are barely any cards out there that are like, hey, you know what? Let's get something on my graveyard, and I get it right away. This is on ETB that, again, isn't limited to a cast trigger. Absolutely amazing. You can also do weird artifact shenanigans with it, too. A very cool card to build a deck around. Okay, another kind of deck that I've had on my mind for a while are, well, a deck that is built around like these really weird, like dragon blank type cards. Not dragons themselves, but these really janky auras from back in the day. I think it was like Scourge. Yeah, and I love that set. That was from when I started playing. Regardless, these kind of dragon type auras, they do different things, okay? Enchanted creature has haste, fire breathing right there as well. Pay the red +1 with 0. Most importantly, though, whenever a creature with a converted mana cost 6 or greater enters the battlefield, you may return it from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. This is a very strange effect. There aren't many effects out there that are, again, like, hey, okay, if I leave, I can just come back out of the graveyard based on a very simple scenario. Now, Creature converted mana cost 6 or greater. That's not every creature, obviously, but you can do some weird things with that. Let's quickly go through the other ones really quick. Dragon's Fangs, +1 run trample, exact same thing as well, coming back out the graveyard. Scales, +1/+2, and it's such an old card that doesn't say Vigilance because attacking doesn't cause it to tap. Vigilance. Dragon's Shadow, +1/0 and Fear, so can't be blocked except by artifact and or black creatures. Dragon Wings, I believe this was the very first golden pig on this channel, actually, in my Nezahal deck. Chain creature is flying, you can cycle it away, and also, again, out of the graveyard, coming back. So, if you built around, say, a creature that you could consistently get back out into play again, and again, and again, and again, kind of like my Nezahal deck, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, I discard 3 cards, it's going away, it comes back in the end of the turn, and then all of a sudden, all these dragon cards come back out of the graveyard attached to that creature. Yeah, that could be quite fun. I was thinking like more of like a Morathon type strategy though, because you could use something like Smoke Shroud as well. And chain creature gets +1, has flying. Whenever a ninja enters battlefield, you control, you may return it from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. So again, Morathon is a changeling, also a ninja, so that actually, you know, makes sense too. And then there is Rines of the Vine Steed. Works in a bit of a different way. +2/+2, and chain creatures put in a graveyard, you may return from your graveyard to play attached to a creature type with that creature. So again, like Morathon could work with that again in some weird way. But yes, being able to kind of utilize these, you know, Smoke Shroud, as well as all the dragon cards to come back into play again and again and again. And you're like, okay, where's this going? Like a Constellation type strategy. You could go with that, okay? When your enchantments enter the battlefield, you get these effects. Like Eidolon Blossoms, draw cards. You could get, you know, a sacrifice strategy going like, okay, if I sacrifice these enchantments, I get value out of them here, there, or everywhere. So yeah, just basically like using and abusing the fact that these cards can come back so incredibly easy. I think it's a pretty cool concept. And again, they are very unique cards. Moving on, we've got Infested Thrax. Yeah, when I saw this card, I was like, okay, that is definitely something that could be built around in pretty crazy fashion. A 4/4 lizard with flash that costs 5 mana Golgari enters the battlefield until end of turn. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a number of 1/1 green sapling creature tokens equal to that creature's power. Okay, so basically, hey, token explosion based on power, and again, this is on ETB, and keep in mind, like I said with Scar Losttrop, it's ETB without the cast trigger requirement. It's just like, okay, yeah, if this ETBs, you get that effect. And you get that effect again and again and again on the same turn. Again, enters the battlefield until end of turn, you get that effect. But let's say that you have, you know, maybe a sacrifice outlet in play. Maybe you got a Feign Death type thing, you know, essentially where you can bring the creature back. Cool. So yeah, Feign Death this creature, sacrifice it, bring it right back, and all of a sudden, you get its effect again. So again, it says, hey, until the end of the turn, whenever a non-token creature dies, you get that. So you're getting its own, you know, power. First of all, you're getting 4 saplings each time that happens. Well, it's going to be 4, then 8, then 16, depending on if you keep bringing this back more and more and more. I mean, I guess 12, I skipped that one too. Regardless, being able to say, you know what, I'm stacking these effects and then sacrificing some massive power creatures to then sacrifice all those saplings as well. Yeah, you can do some pretty crazy things when it comes to aristocrat style strategies. Just, I mean, even if you just like have maybe a haste enabler just attacking with all those 1/1s as well. More likely, yeah, some blood artist type effects, though, to drain out your opponents. So yeah, like a Feign Death, Blink, Sacrifice, Explosion type deck. What's not to love about that with a very weird card like this? Moving on, speaking of weird cards, I just have this one labeled as gotta be a combo here somewhere. Yeah, Watchful Rad Stag, a 2/2 Elk Mutant with Evolve for 3 mana in green. Whenever it evolves, create a token that's a copy of it. Yeah, there's got to be some weird combo going on with this one that is pretty simple that I am just missing right now, but let me know in the comments below. This seems like a card you can build an entire deck around, just using and abusing, it evolving, it growing, and then it just making token copies and just spreading, kind of like a Scoot Swarm type strategy. Being able to just go so wide with one creature, it's absolutely crazy. Yeah, you could go, you know, with aristocrat style. You could go like Warstorm Surge if you want to go with that. Ways to win. Or just, yeah, just swing with your giant elk army and just decimate your opponents. There's got to be something here somewhere. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this one. I think it's a very interesting card that you could definitely build an entire strategy around. Moving on. This card is just spicy. There's really not anything like it that I can think of right now. Another round. Sorcery for X, X2 in white. exile any number of creatures you control to return them to the battlefield under zone of control. Then repeat this process X more times. It's one of those cards, like, if you start playing Magic, you're like, why would I want my creatures to leave, then come back, then leave, then come back, then leave, then come back, again and again and again. But if you see this as a, more experienced Commander player, you're like, oh my gosh, Blink decks are like, hey, if I can get a massive amount of mana, just getting all those ETBs an absurd amount of times, that sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds like a lot of fun, being able to just get these again and again and again. Of course, there's some, ways you could probably get this back as well, like, Archaeomancer type things. But yeah, just like a mass mana, mass blink, giant finisher type card. Yeah, you could build an entire deck around this one, just being like, okay, I'm getting to the point where I'm here. I'm ready to go. And all of a sudden, Gary's in play. Great Merchant of Asphodel. Giant blink effect. And all of a sudden, I blinked it like 10 times and you're all gone. Now, you don't need to necessarily blink it 10 times to win, but still. Yeah, being able to mass mana, mass blink, I think that could be a really cool concept around this weird card. Next up, Mass Donate with Coveted Falcon, a 1/4 bird with flying for 3 mana in blue. Whenever it attacks, gain control of target permanent you own, but don't control. Very interesting. You can also disguise it for 1 in a blue, and it says when it's turned face up, target opponent gains control of any number of target permanents you control. Draw a card for each one they gain control of this way. This is just a really spicy, weird card that you could do a couple of different things with it. I'm not recommending this one, but you literally could just do like a king make deck where you're like, okay, my goal is not to win. My goal is just literally to build up a board, pick another player and say, hey, you get all my permanents. You're welcome. You win. Hooray. Yeah, that might be a pretty boring deck, and many players out there might really despise you for doing that because you're just kind of, determining who wins the game but not trying to win yourself. So, in my opinion, maybe don't do that. And if you are going to try to do that, you probably should just definitely ask first. That being said, with this, though, you could build around like some kind of like a homeward path type strategy where you're like, okay, like, I'll donate a lot of things when I need to one of my opponents to help them out, make a massive deal. And then all of a sudden, when I need that stuff back, I can get it back. I can ensure that I'm owning all my permanents again. I mean, this can very slowly get your things back, obviously, but being able to just get them back quite quickly can be quite nice. It could be a go wide strategy where you're just like, okay, I've got a ton of different permanents to play. I made a bunch of tokens. Maybe they're clue tokens, creature tokens, whatever there are. Donating all of those and then drawing a ton of cards off of that, maybe having some triggers that happen when you draw those cards, like you've got a Psychosis Crawler or whatever it is. Maybe you've got a way to maybe bounce this back to your hand, get it back into play, and do it later after you gain control of the things again. It could be, again, a bad gift strategy. We're like, okay, cool, I've got all these really bad things. You have them now. You're welcome. So yeah, being able to build in a couple of different ways, I think could be quite spicy with a very unique card like this. You don't really see too many mass donate type effects at all, and this is a very spicy one. Okay, one of the most unique cards of all time has got to be Conspiracy Unraveler. I have this one labeled as Mass Mill Huge CMC Craziness. Yeah, I still put CMC sometimes instead of mana value. It's a transition that hasn't happened for me just yet to know, when to put CMC, when to put a mana value. I go back and forth sometimes on that one. Anyways, 6/6 Sphinx Detective flying for 7 mana in blue. You may collect evidence 10 rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. Again, collecting evidence 10 means, hey, exile cards with 12 mana value 10 or greater from your graveyard. That is like Omniscience Sphinx, but with like a need for a giant graveyard, which is quite spicy, quite amazing. I mean, giant graveyard, but also giant things in the graveyard. Having this set up is quite the opportunity and quite a, journey that can be very rewarding, where you essentially can just like maybe mass mill yourself, get a ton of cards into your graveyard, and all of a sudden be like, okay, you ready? Free spell, 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 free spell that mills me even more. Free spell, free spell, free spell, free spell, free spell. So having like this deck that is built around, again, literally just getting your graveyard chock full of giant things, getting this amazing Sphinx out, and then getting some massive cards in your hand. Yeah, I think this could be a lot of fun. Being able to build around, again, kind of like Omniscience with a massive twist that requires some really cool deck building to make it work. I am all about this, absolutely. At some point in my life, I got to build a deck around this one. Conspiracy Unraveler, you are definitely mythic level, crazy, weirdness, unique, awesomeness. All the words. Next up, we've got a card again from my childhood. Day of the Dragons, back in Scourge times, I think. I don't know. Anyways, enchantment for 7 mana in blue, enters the battlefield, exile creatures you control, then create that many 5/5 red dragon creature tokens with flying. When Day of the Dragons leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all dragons you control to return the exile cards to the battlefield under your control. This is a very interesting card in that it's kind of like a mass storage type card in a way. I mean, I guess if you're not just making a bunch of 1/1 soldiers that turn into dragons, cool, you can definitely go about it that way where it's like, okay, cool, yeah, I've got some tiny little 1/1s, switch them into 5/5s. Goodbye, opponents. Or it can just be a way to say okay, I've got all these great creatures with some mass blink effects, essentially. Or, I mean, mass amount of creatures that have blink effects, I should say. And then be able to say, okay, all of you are gone. You're replaced by giant dragons. Sure, I can win in that way if I want to. Maybe if I got a War Storm Surge, it's all of a sudden, okay, 5 damage per creature, goodbye opponents. Or, again, you could have ways that can maybe even blink this enchantment for you. Or maybe bounce it back to your hand. So again, a way to essentially say, okay, I'm ready to reset. I've got my army. Oh no, my dragons are getting dealt with, whatever. Someone casts a Wrath of God. All of a sudden, yeah, okay, I blink it. I put it back in my hand, whatever I'm going to do with it. And all of a sudden, I get all those creature ETBs coming back into play again. Again, if I just blinked it, it's coming back into play and exiling them again. So I get some more dragons again. It's like resetting it. So you can kind of just keep making a dragon army out of this, which is quite spicy. Or you can just really use and abuse ETBs, or both. So yeah, kind of like a mass repeat ETB blink shenanigans type deck. Absolutely lovely. Definitely a very unique card. One that I've considered building around for a while, and I just need to pull the trigger on it. Next up, a newer card that is so cool and unique. Power Balance, enchantment for just 2 red mana. I mean, this is one where you could just play this out early in the game and be like, let's just see what happens. And it can already just be a fun game. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, you may cast the card without paying its mana cost if the 2 spells have the same mana value. This is a bit of a weird card. I mean, a lot of these cards have been weird, but this one is especially weird because it's not dependent upon you on things happening. You can build your deck in the best way that you can, but you need to find ways to work with this. So, yeah, opponents are casting spells, and you need to be able to, know what the top of your library is, potentially know what's going to be in your opponent's hands, and hope that you can hit the right things. Now, you could just build your entire deck around, okay, on average, most spells in Commander are probably I don't know, 3 mana or so. You could just build all 3 mana spells and just have a lot of value to be had, but where's the fun in that? I mean, it is fun still, but being able to build around, some bigger spells and be okay, when my opponents play bigger spells, I'm going to ensure that I have those on top, know that I can hit them, and just get really free, crazy value off the top of my deck. Absolutely lovely. See, again, this is a kind of card that you can have a lot of fun with. Top deck manipulation, hand sight type deck could be a really cool card. Moving on, we've got Realm Breaker, the Invasion Tree. Now, this one might be, on the list. Some people are like, oh yeah, okay, I know what that does, but I'm going to give you a slight of a different, strategy with it. Let's talk about this. So, a Ledger Artifact for 3, pay 2, tap, target opponent, mills 3 cards, play a land card from their graveyard on the battlefield, tapped under your control. It gains if this land will leave the battlefield. Exile instead of putting it anywhere else. By paying 10, though, you can tap and sacrifice it. Search live for any number of Praetor cards from the battlefield, then shuffle. Here's the thing. Yeah, okay, we can go Praetors. I personally am a budget player, so Praetors typically are way outside of my budget. In fact, there are very few, I think, that are even underneath $1. Regardless, you can still build, all Praetors deck, and that's still quite spicy, being yeah, just basically spend 13 mana and tutor out every single Praetor in my deck. Lovely. You probably win. That being said, of course, you can go with Changelings as well, and that's the direction that I would take it. And there's some very spicy Changeling type effects that you can have. Oh my goodness. Yes, being able to just go get all the Changelings out of the deck and just throw them on the battlefield and have some very fun effects. I mean, the championing a creature Changelings could do some very, very crazy, maybe even broken things with this as well. Being able to say, you know what, okay, I've got a War Storm Surge in play, and then I use this, and I get all those creatures coming into play, all those different ETBs that you can have. Yeah, this can be a really fun type effect. I mean, it is nice early in the game too, right? Potentially getting some lands. Nice. Cool. Later on, though, just being yeah, massive amount of mana, and all of a sudden, boom, my entire deck of Changelings is now into play. and all these fun things happen with it. So yeah, I definitely think a very interesting deck could be built around it outside of just Praetor. Okay, next up, the Enigma Jewel. This one is kind of like a build your own, like, weird combo artifact type deck, which does take some, like, working around, but could be pretty cool. Enters battlefield taps for 2, spends mana only to activate abilities, so it's kind of like a Soul Ring-ish, but also slower, and also just for abilities, so yeah, I mean, obviously, this could be very specific on the kind of deck that you include on it for that, like a commander that maybe was an activated ability. That being said, it also has craft with 4 or more non-land cards with non-lands, I should say, with activated abilities. So all of a sudden, when you craft it, it switches over to Locus of Enlightenment, a legendary artifact, has each activated ability of the cards used to craft it. You may activate each of those abilities only once each turn. When you activate an ability that isn't a mana ability copy, choose target to the copy. I mean, yeah, I guess when I say combo, it's not like infinite combo because it does limit it. Like, you may activate only once each turn. So it's like you can just like, oh, okay, cool, like Basalt Monolith shenanigans. No. I mean, sure, there's ways to do it, but no. That being said, being able to like, oh, okay, cool, whenever I activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, I get to copy it, and this has like all the abilities that I could ever want, most likely. You can do some really crazy, amazing things with this. Again, it seems like a card that's not that threatening on the front. You flip it over, and all of a sudden, you've got so much value to be had in an activate ability kind of tribal deck, essentially. I think it could be a very cool card to build around. Next up, Monument to Perfection. Yet another weird artifact that I want to highlight. Artifact for 2, pay 3, tap, search life for a basic sphere or locust land card. Reveal, open your hand, then shuffle. But really, here's the thing. Paying 3 becomes a 9/9 Phyrexian. Construct artifact creature token, loses all abilities, gains indestructible and toxic 9. Activate only if there are 9 or more lands with different names among the basic sphere and locust lands you control. I mean, here's the thing. Do you have to build your deck kind of specifically to like make this work? Sure, but I mean, if you've got a 5-color deck, which, guilty, love 5-color decks, you're already 5 out of the 9 there, right, with the basic lands. I guess technically you could just do snow-covered lands too, and you're already there as well, right? So just do that. Or you could go with spheres or locusts or whatever you want to do, sure. But being able to have, again, a 9/9 that becomes indestructible and has toxic 9? Yeah, basically like a mini Blightsteel Colossus that is 11 cents and requires a lot of building around, but only costs 5 mana to get out, really, which is quite fun, quite spicy, and okay, alright, unlike Blightsteel Colossus, it is not a one-shot KO, right? It has Toxic 9, not Toxic 10. Okay, Wizard, sure, fine, whatever. That being said, I mean, you can finish off your opponents with a variety of things, like any other thing that has Toxic, even just 1. Any other thing that has Infect. Any kind of Proliferate effect. However you need to do it, you can. But yeah, having basically like a baby Blightsteel type deck built around this card, I think could be quite spicy, quite amazing, quite fun, and a good challenge to build around. Okay, next up, this card is just weird. Again, guilty, I love 5 colors, so when I saw there's a 5-color battle, I was like, yeah, let's do that. Battle Siege, Invasion of Aara for all the 5 colors, Wooberg. When it enters the battlefield, exile cards to the top of your library until you exile 2 non-land cards of mana value 4 or less. You may cast one of those 2 cards without paying its mana cost, put one of them in your hand, put the cards exile this way at the bottom of your library in a random order. Basically, I mean, you could build around just the entire front side, being like, okay, cool, I cast this and then cast a card because nothing else in my deck has mana value 4 or less except for 2 cards. You could do that. You could make a combo out of it if you want to. That being said, what I really like to build around is, well, after you take out this, again, that's 7, take it out, flip it over, awaken the Maelstrom. Sorcery, it is all colors. Target player draws 2 cards. You may put an artifact card from your hand on the battlefield. Create tokens, copy target permanent you control. Distribute 3 counters among 1, 2, or 3 creatures. Destroy target permanent opponent controls. I mean, just building around literally getting this to flip and casting it and getting all that value, but not just getting that, being able to maybe, let's say, copy it again, copy it again, copy it again, copy it so many times, like Swarm Intelligence, things like that. Being able to get so much value out of this, my goodness, that is a spicy play. So that when you do end up flipping it, you're like, oh, by the way, all this value to be had after the value I got at the front, I think it'd be a cool card to build around. Next up, Flock Chaser Phantom, a 5/5 spirit with Convoke for 6 mana and Azorius, Flying Vigilance. Whenever it attacks, the next spell you cast this turn has Convoke. Giving a spell Convoke is a very, very, very cool thing, and it's something you typically don't see, like, hey, any spell you want has Convoke, all right? The next spell you cast just has Convoke. Sure, being able to just go wide in a strategy like this one, being able to get a lot of creatures in play, and now all of a sudden saying, hey, every single one of you creatures, you're going to help me with this next spell. Obviously, the way that I would go with it is probably like, giant X spell fun times. I mean, there's a lot of great ones out there. I've built countless decks around Villainous Wealth. Love that card. But there's other great decks as well that can be just amazing finishers for you too. So being able to just build up the army, get this in play and be like, okay, yeah, swing with it. And all of a sudden, hey, opponents, get ready. Here comes the giant spell. And they'd be like, oh no, I'm gone. Yeah. So you can do a lot of fun things with this one. Next up, we've got Gruff triplets. This one is just strange, and there's got to be some really, really, really cool ways to use and abuse it. A 3/3 Satyr Warrior with trample for 6 mana in green. Enters the battlefield. If it isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. When it dies, put a number of counters equal to its power on each creature controlled named Gruff triplets. I mean, just on its own, it's already like a good amount of power across 3 bodies, essentially, right? And of course, when they die, the other ones just get more power. So it's already kind of along the lines of, well, whatever that slime's called or whatever, that just kind of like, multiplies when it dies. That being said, you can do some crazy things with this, of course, with, some blink effects and also some ways to, maybe make it so the power on these cards is bigger and bigger and bigger. You can do some really crazy things with this one. It is a very unique card. It is one that is so specific, but it is so, inviting to build around. What a unique, amazing card. Next up, now this is like a full deck, like we just need to make sure that we get that right moment to happen where our opponents are like, oh my gosh, all these things are happening, and then, oh wait, they just cast what? They just cast what? They just cast Display of Power, instant for 3 mana in red, can't be copied. Yeah, it's probably a good call on that one, Wizards. Copy any number of target instant and or sorcery spells, choose targets for the copies. Basically, hey, I've got this giant, massive turn. I've got all these crazy things going on. I'm casting all these spells. I'm leaving them all in the stack, and then all of a sudden, I cast this. Obviously, can work really well if you've got, say, like Swarm Intelligence in play as well. Just having this giant, massive turn where your opponents are like, oh my gosh, they've got all these spells. Wait, why are they casting them in succession without letting them resolve? And then all of a sudden, you cast this, and you're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's double everything up, including, let's say your opponents are like, oh, let's stop this right now. And you're like, no, I'm going to copy your counter spell. Thank you. Okay, goodbye. Okay, this next card is unique and just a bit weird, and I love it. Gruff rewrites history. Instant for 3 mana in red. For each player, choose target non-enchantment, non-land permanent that player controls. Those permanents' owners shuffle them in their libraries. Each player who controlled one of those permanents exiles cards to the top of their library to exile a non-land card, then puts the rest of the bottom of the library in a random order. Each player may cast the non-land card without the exile without paying its mana cost. So essentially, with this kind of a card, being able to say, you know what, everyone's got these things in play. Let's just basically polymorph them, okay? You know what? We don't need those things. Let's flip them into something else. Yeah, if I was building a deck around this card, I would have so many copy effects. I would have so many ways to get this card back again and again and again, and just polymorph again and again and again for every single player out there. And of course, have some massive heavy hitters to actually hit myself as well. Yeah, I think this is a card that you could definitely build around and get a really spicy deck out of it. Next up, earlier when I was talking about those, Dragon's Breath, dragon type cards earlier, where like, okay, you got like a Constellation type deck. This one might be an easier approach to it, and one that could be very, very good. A sorcery 4 mana in blue. You can cast it for flash by paying 2 more if you really want to do that. Sure. For each creature your opponents control, create a cursed roll token attached to that creature. This is just a way to basically make, again, how many creatures your opponents have? Sure, 20 in total, whatever it is. All right, cool. Make 20 enchantments. My goodness. If you've got any kind of Constellation effects in play, again, when enchantment enters the battlefield, do this. You're going to have a good time. Eat a lot of blossoms. Draw again 20 cards, whatever it is. Being able to maybe, what's that one called where, like enters the battlefield enchantment and all your opponents discard a card. Yeah, that one costs 6 mana in black. Whatever that one is. It's brutal, it's mean, it's amazing. Your opponents are going to lose if you play this and that. All of a sudden, they are gone. Yeah, Archfiend of Ifnir, get rid of your opponent's creatures. There's a lot of crazy things that you can do with this one. I mean, get rid of their creatures while also, putting these things on creatures. It's quite fun. So yeah, being able to build like a Constellation type deck with like maybe even like creature creation for your opponents could be a very unique and spicy deck for this awesome card. Okay, when it comes to some unique cards that we don't see too often, Wizards like knew that Storm was gonna be a thing that they were gonna hold off on for a while after, you know, they made Storm. They're like, oh my gosh, this is just really overpowered. We're gonna call it the Storm scale now. So we don't get Storm cards too often, but when we do, my goodness, pay attention. Mordor on the March, 5 mana in Rakdos Sorcery. Exile creature card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it. It gains haste until end of turn. Exile being next end step. Yeah, and Storm. So again, copy for each spellcast for this turn. This is a huge, amazing card. So basically just being like, okay, you know what? I'm going to have this big, explosive, crazy play. I am going to maybe, again, mass mill. Get a ton of things into my graveyard. Maybe cast some ritual effects, cast some cantrip effects. Being able to cast a ton of spells again. Get that Storm count out, and all of a sudden, cast this and just say, all right, my graveyard is now in play. They are hasty. Again, they're creature token copies, so you can also play into some populate effects as well with that. And all of a sudden being like, okay, you know what? This giant play has happened, and you all are gone out of nowhere. A very spicy card to build around. Okay, one really quick that I probably should have mentioned with Realm Breaker because it's along the same line, so my apologies for that. A sorcery for 6 mana. The 5 doctors, which, yeah, if you're playing like Doctor Tribal, sure. I'm not talking about that, and you might see where this is going already. But yeah, kick it for 5. Search the library, enter a graveyard for the 5 doctor cards, reveal them, put them in your hand. If you search the library this way, then shuffle. But if it was kicked, they go right on the battlefield instead of putting them in your hand. Basically, yeah, you go get 5 creatures and put them right into play. Again, if they are changelings, or it's something I probably should have mentioned with Realm Breaker as well. Yeah, if you've got something, that can make all your things in your deck into basically changelings, every single creature type you want, or just a specific one if you build your deck around that, well, all of a sudden, you can just say, you know what? I'm paying 11 mana. That is a good amount, but I go tutor out exactly 5 creatures that I want in play at the exact same time. Yeah, you can combo win with that if you want to like Tooth and Nail. I mean, Tooth and Nail is a bit simpler than that, but yeah, you can combo with that or just have some really crazy, spicy effects. Seems like a pretty cool concept to build around if you are into, really weird concepts like that one. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Make sure you comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.